Alright, we are back with the build of the Compass 3D Plus. This part of the manual gets to be a little bit tricky in terms of what you should cover in these sections of the video, so I'm going to try to do it in a very straightforward manner, but it does get a bit tricky when certain sections do get combined with one another or relate to each other. Basically, the section of the manual that I've just completed and that I will speak about now is section 5 in the flybar manual. In the main manual, it's step 5 and step 6 is really the parts that, and even step 7 and step 8. So it's really steps 5 through 8 are the main sections that I've completed. Not completed 100% because there are things that need to be completed in future steps, but basically starting with step 5, which is the rotor head, the washout and swash plate assemblies, and getting those installed upon the bird, it's fairly straightforward. Basically you take the washout assembly, and the washout mixers are already pre-assembled. The phasing ring is part of the washout base in the packaging, and it's in that step. Also the swash plate gets its own little bag, and then the rotor head is one complete assembly as well. The flybar is not installed, obviously, and the head's not set up. It's just loosely assembled. One key thing to remember is that the spindle bolts are not Loctited, so you will need to remove those, you will need to Loctite them, and you will need to put the spindle assembly with the grips back together again. One thing that I did do that you may or may not want to do, just depending on how you like your head to feel in flight, is when I had the head apart, when I was took the head apart so I could get the spindle bolts in and Loctited, was that I put the second O-ring on each head dampener. Now the way that the 3D Plus dampeners work, it's the exact same dampener setup as the old Knight 3D. It's got the Delrin hard plastic dampener itself with an O-ring dampening system. It's got 2 grooves built into the Delrin, ground out of the Delrin. It comes pre-assembled from the factory with 1 O-ring per side, and that's basically soft style dampening, and then basically once you install a second O-ring on the second groove, it stiffens up the dampening. Now for those of you that like a super stiff head like I do, the two O-rings still may not be quite stiff enough for you, in which case you can obviously go to aftermarket dampeners like the K&B Dream Designs orange dampeners for the Knight series. They will work in this, so you may want something a bit stiffer. I'm going to fly it as is, just with the second O-ring installed, and that's it. I'll fly it as is with the plastic grips and everything basically out of the box stock. I will see how it flies. I tend to like a very, very stiff head setup versus a lot of pilots. I may eventually go with the metal grip upgrade and also go with the K&B Dream Designs dampener upgrade as well. But we'll fly it as is. I've simply put that second O-ring on there. You may wish to do so as well. That's a Compass part, so that's not a problem to get those O-rings, and they're very inexpensive to upgrade that dampener to an extra O-ring to stiffen it up. The head assembly comes, like I said, lightly pre-assembled, and it comes with a skewer through the flybar carrier, through the center of the head block, and out through these lock collars on the end of the flybar carrier. So basically what you do is you need to undo the set screws on the flybar collars. At the end, you need the flybar carrier collars, sorry. The flybar control arms, you need to undo the set screws on those and basically push out the skewer using the flybar. As you thread it through, it will just push out that piece of wood and replace it with the flybar. Now, before you start tightening anything down or anything like that, the first thing you need to do is to make sure that once you stick these collars back on with the flybar on, that the same, now obviously this is without the paddles on yet, you want to make sure that the same amount of flybar is sticking out each end of the flybar collars. So the set collars that you see here, these collars here have set screws in them. So once you have the equal amount as measured with your caliper sticking out each side, tighten down these set screws on these collars. These collars don't need to be rock solid tight up against the flybar carrier. There have been people that have snapped some of the old flybars off because they've put these collars too tight against the flybar carrier, and they just don't need to be that tight. They need to be snug up against there, but they don't need to be pushed super tight up against there. So just hold them in nice and tight, and just snug, and then put the set screws in, and away you go. Now some Other pilots have mentioned to me that they prefer a complete box flybar cage. I like either setup, the square flybar cage or the simple flybar control arms. There are pros and cons to both setups. This one is actually very easy to set up. The way that I suggest that pilots do it, to make it very, very simple, is to take one of the flybar control arms, center it in the center of its hole here on the flybar carrier, tighten down the set screw, and then either put it all the way to the top or all the way to the bottom, and then push the alternate flybar control arm the opposite direction all the way, and that will tell you how far it needs to go to tighten the opposing set screw. Because if you try to center them both and you try to hold them while you're tightening the set screws down, it's just too difficult. So tighten one. You'll see here that you just center it, slide it on here, center it in the center of this hole here, tighten down the set screw, and then either move it to the top or the bottom. Either way, I like to hold it sort of there or there. Hold it all the way up against until it binds on the flybar carrier, and then move the other flybar control arm the opposite direction until it binds and until it goes as far as it can go. Then you know that's at that point you can tighten the alternate set screw on the other flybar control arm, and then they will be at max throws on going both directions. So that makes it really, really easy to set those up. The other benefit is of this style setup versus a box style setup like on T-Rexes, etc., is the fact that when you need to replace links or you need to adjust links, they're very easy to pop off, as opposed to needing to disassemble your entire flybar cage to do any work on the flybar setup. So anyways, there are pros and cons. Essentially, you slide the once the head is complete and it's built and put together, then essentially you slide your swash plate on. You can screw your guide for the swash plate, the anti-rotation bracket. You can screw that in with the 2 screws. You can put your washout on. You can install that. You can snap it onto the swash plate. You can mount the head to the main shaft with the Jesus bolt there. And that's pretty much as far as you can go. You can't, at this stage, you cannot adjust the phasing ring simply because you cannot adjust the height of it, because you don't know exactly how much room you're going to have with the swash plate until you get the swash plate centered in its total available travel. So I'll leave that till another later stage. So essentially what I've done is I've put the swash plate on, I've put the washout on, I've assembled the head, I've Loctited it, I've explain to you how I put the flybar through the flybar carrier. Once again, the paddles, this distance here, so between the lock collar here and the flybar paddle on each side, that distance needs to be identical, so measure it again with your calipers. So the amount of metal sticking out from the collar needs to be identical, and then the distance between the collar and the paddles needs to be identical on each side so that they match on both sides for balance purposes. So in any case, you also, right before the last shot that I'll show you, is that before you tighten down these paddles, you need to ensure that they line up perfectly squarely with the flybar control arm on that side. So basically we want this to be in line with this arm, which is also in line with this arm, which is also in line with this paddle. So we want that to be a perfectly straight plane. So as you look along it, you can sight it and you can line it up. You can line it up with this control arm, you can line it up with the ball on the opposing control arm, and you can line it up with the opposite flybar paddle. So make sure that that's all nice and flat and perfectly straight and level. Tighten everything down, make sure that the set screws all get Loctite, and make sure that you Loctite those that spindle shaft bolts on either side. So, and then put the head back together and pop it on the bird. So anyways, I think that pretty much does it for those